Chapter 12. Minerva, August to November 25th, 1960. House arrest, August and September. All my life, I had been trying to get out of the house. Papa always complained that, of his 4 girls, I should be born to cut loose. First, I wanted to go to boarding school, then university. When Manolo and I started the underground, I traveled back and forth from Montecristi to Salcedo, connecting cell with cell. I couldn't stand the idea of being locked up in any one life. So, when we were released in August and put under house arrest, you'd have thought I was getting just the punishment for me. But to tell the truth, it was as if I'd been served my sentence on a silver platter. By then, I couldn't think of anything I wanted more than to stay home with my sisters at Mama's, raising our children. Those first few weeks at home took some getting used to. After 7 months in prison, a lot of that time in solitary, the overload was too much. The phone ringing, a visitor dropping by, with permission from Peña, of course. Peña himself dropping by to see about the visitor. Don Bernardo with guavas from his tree, rooms to go in and out of. Children wanting their shoelaces tied. The phone ringing again. What to do with the curdled milk? In the middle of the day, when I should have been out soaking up sun and getting good country air in my infected lungs, I would seek the quiet of the bedroom, slip out of my dress, and lie under the sheets, watching the sun speckling the leaves through the barely opened jalousies. But as I lay there, the same overload would start happening in my head. Bits and pieces of the past would bob up in the watery soup of my thoughts those days. Leo explaining how to hit the volleyball so there was a curve in its fall. The rain falling on our way to Papa's funeral. My hand coming down on Trujillo's face. The doctor slapping her first breath into my newborn baby girl. I'd sit up, shocked at what I was letting happen to me. I had been so much stronger and braver in prison. Now at home, I was falling apart. Or, I thought, lying back down, I'm ready for a new life, and this is how it starts. I grew stronger gradually and began taking part in the life of the household. None of us had any money, and the dwindling income from the farm was being stretched mighty thin across 5 families. So we started up a specialty business of children's christening gowns. I did the simple stitching and seam binding. The pneumonia in my lungs cleared up. I got my appetite back and began to regain the weight I'd lost in prison. I could wear again my old clothes Doña Fefita had brought down from Montecristi. And of course, my children were a wonder. I'd swoop down on them, showering them with kisses. "Mommy!" they'd shriek. How lovely to be called mother again, to have their little arms around my neck, their sane, sweet breath in my face. And pinto beans, were they always so colorful? "Wait, wait, wait!" I'd cry out to Fela before she dunked them in the water. I'd scoop up handfuls just to hear the soft rattle of their downpour back in the pot. Everything I had to touch, everything I had to taste. I wanted everything back in my life again. But sometimes, a certain slant of light would send me back. The light used to fall just so at this time of day, on the floor below my top bunk. And once, Minu got hold of a piece of pipe and was rattling it against the Galleria rail. It was a sound exactly recalling the guards in prison running their nightsticks against the bars. I ran out and yanked the pipe from her hand, screaming, "No!" My poor little girl burst out crying, frightened by the terror in my voice. But those memories, too, began to fade. They became stories. Everyone wanted to hear them. Mate and I could keep the house entertained for hours, telling and retelling the horrors until the sting was out of them. We were allowed 2 outings a week, Thursdays to La Victoria to visit the men, and Sundays to church. But for all that I was free to travel, I dreaded going out of the house. The minute we turned onto the road, my heart started pounding and my breathing got shallow. The open vistas distressed me. The sense of being adrift in a crowd of people pressing in on all sides, wanting to touch me, greet me, wish me well. Even in church, during the privacy of Holy Communion, Father Gabriel bent down and whispered, "Viva la mariposa." My months in prison had elevated me to superhuman status. It would hardly have been seemly for someone who had challenged our dictator to suddenly succumb to a nervous attack at the communion rail. I hid my anxieties and gave everyone a bright smile. If they had only known how frail was their iron will heroine, how much it took to put on that hardest of all performances, being my old self again. My best performances were reserved for Peña's visits. He came often to supervise our house arrest. The children got so used to his toad face and grabby hands, they began calling him Tío Capitán and asking to hold his gun and ride on his knee horse. I myself could not get used to him. Whenever that big white Mercedes turned into our narrow driveway, I ran to my bedroom and shut the door to give myself time to put on my old self face. In no time, someone was sent back there to get me. "It's Peña. You've got to come." Even Mama, who once refused to receive him, now buttered him up whenever he was over. After all, he had let her have her babies back. One afternoon I was out trimming the laurel in the front yard. Manolito was helping me. After cutting the branches all but a sliver, I held him up to pull them off. From his perch on my shoulders, he reported all he saw out on the road. "Tío's car!" he cried out. And sure enough, I saw the flash of white through a break in the hedge. It was too late to tune up for my performance. I went directly to the carport to receive him. "What a rare occasion, Doña Minerva. The last few times I've come, you haven't been well. In other words, I've noticed your rudeness. All of it is filed away. You must be feeling better," he observed, without a question mark. "I saw your car! I saw your car!" sang Manolito. "Manolito, my boy, you are all eyes. We could use men like you in the Sistema de Inteligencia Militar." The seam. Oh, God, I thought. "Ladies, it's nice to have you all here," Peña noted, when Mate and Patria joined us on the patio. Dede had appeared with her shears to work on the hedge, and kept her eye on things. Whenever she didn't like my tone, she would clip the crown of thorns violently, scattering a spray of leaves and red petals in the air. For the umpteenth time, Peña reminded us how lucky we were. Our 5-year sentence had been commuted to house arrest. Instead of the restrictions of prison, we had only a few rules to obey. We called them Peña's commandments. He rehearsed them each time he came. No trips, no visitors, no contact with politicals. Any exceptions only by his permission. Clear? We nodded. I was tempted to bring out the broom and set it by the door, the country way to tell people it was time to go. Peña dunked the bobbing ice cubes with a fat finger. Today he had come for more than the recital of his rules. "El Jefe has not visited our province for a while now," he began. Of course not, I thought. Most families in Salcedo had at least one son or daughter or husband in prison. "We are trying to get him to come. All loyal citizens are writing letters." Clip, clip went Dede's shears, as if to drown out anything I might be thinking. "El Jefe has been very generous to you girls. It would be nice if you composed a letter of thanks for his leniency." He glanced at me and Mate, resting his eyes on Patria last. We gave him nothing with our faces. Poor nervous Dede, who had edged up the patio towards us and was rewatering all the plants, said that yes, that would be wise. "I mean nice," she corrected herself quickly, and Patria, Mate, and I bowed our heads to hide our smiles. After Peña left, there was a fight. The others wanted to go ahead and write the damn letter, but I was against it. Thank Trujillo for punishing us? "But what harm can a little letter do?" Mate argued. It was no longer so easy for me to talk that one into anything. "People look to us to be an example. We've got a responsibility." I spoke so fiercely they looked a little sheepish. My old self was putting on quite a show. "Now, Minerva," Patria reasoned, "you know if he publishes the silly thing, everyone will know why we wrote it." "Just go along with us this one time," Mate pleaded with me. It reminded me of that time in Immaculada when I had not wanted to perform for Trujillo with my friends, but I had given in to them, and we had almost met our end, too, with Sinita's bow and arrow assassination attempt. What finally convinced me was Patria's argument, that the letter might help free the men. A grateful note from the Mirabal sisters might just soften El Jefe's heart towards our husbands. "Heart?" I said, making a face. Then, sitting down to our task, I made it perfectly clear. This is against my better principles. "Someone needs to have less principles and more sense," Dede murmured, but without much fight in her voice. I think she was relieved to see a little spark of the old Minerva again. Afterwards, I felt small with what I'd done. "We've got to do something," I kept muttering. "Calm down, Minerva. Here," Dede said, pulling down Gandhi from the shelf. Elsa had given me this book when I first got out of prison, to show me, she said, that being passive and gentle could be revolutionary. Dede had approved wholeheartedly. Today, Gandhi would not do. What I needed was a shot of Fidel's fiery rhetoric. He would have agreed with me. We had to do something soon. "We have to accept this cross is what we have to do," Patria said. "Like hell we do," I said. I was on a rampage. It lasted only until the end of that day. We were already in bed when I heard them, talking loudly on the porch. They were everywhere. The dark glasses, the iron pants, the pomaded hair. They stayed on the road until night, when they drew close to the house, like moths draw towards the light. Usually, I covered my head with my pillow, and after a while fell asleep. But tonight I couldn't ignore them. I got up from bed, not even bothering to throw a shawl over my nightgown. Dede caught me going out the door. She tried to hold me back, but weak though I still was, I pushed her aside easily. Dede was still Dede, without much conviction in her fighting. 2 seam agents were sitting on our rockers, as comfortable as you please. "Compañeros," I said, startling them in mid-rock with the revolutionary greeting. "I'm going to have to ask you to please keep your voices down. You're right under our bedroom windows. Remember, you are guards, not guests here." Neither of them said a word. "Well, if there's nothing else, good night then, compañeros." I had turned back towards the door when one of them called out, "Viva Trujillo!" the patriotic way of beginning and closing the day. But I wasn't going to invoke the devil's name in my own yard. After a short pause in which she was probably waiting to see if I'd answer, Dede called from inside the house, "Viva Trujillo! Viva Trujillo!" Mate took it up. And then a couple of more voices added their good wishes to our dictator, until what had been a scared compliance became, by the exaggeration of repetition, a joke. but I could feel the men listening specifically for my loyalty call.